we've got to do it very differently. We are inert in the National Health Service. We struggle when we see something that we want to move to and do differently. The forces and powers of conservatism hold us into our current state. So I fully support NHS England's view of vanguards and demonstrator sites to prototype some of these new ideas. Part of the report, and I won't dwell on it here, but when you go through transactions of change between organisations, they take years to pursue to an end. And in those years, you are consuming an incredible amount of taxpayers' money, I think, for very little value. So the recommendations, there are a whole suite of them about how the NHS and the Department of Health and others can just tidy all that up and be able to have their transactions done at pace and at much lower cost. It's my view that when foundation trusts were formed, there was a new spirit. There was a sense of can-do, an entrepreneurial sense that new things were possible. And I think for a variety of reasons, we have lost that. So part of the conversation that I've been having with politicians and staff at the department and NHS England is how we can identify those organisations that have an appetite, if they've been able to prove their success, to codify what they do and seek to replicate it into other organisations, if they so choose to. Nobody should force them to do this, but how can we encourage organisations with a track record of success to spread that success, particularly into those organisations which are having difficulty, and especially those that are in persistent difficulty. And the report talks about the characteristics of highly reliable organisations. You'll find that our colleagues in North America pay much more attention to high reliability than we appear to do in the UK. So I recommend that we should build upon the current assessment systems and allow organisations to be credentialed, those that are able to demonstrate through assessment that they have a track record of success, and allow them to enter new procurement framework agreements so that commissioners can go to these organisations and can ask for their involvement in organisations that are in difficulty. Now, it's nearly 11 years since the Foundation Trust movement started, and yet there are still 93 organisations that have not made it through the pipeline. And it's my view that no matter how you grease that pipeline and squeeze it, a number of those organisations will not appear at the other end. Foundation Trust status is a marker. It's a set of standards that can be reasonably achieved by organisations, and we ought to question seriously that after nearly 11 years, if organisations have been unable to provide a convincing case that they can demonstrate that they have both the clinical and financial viability to be a foundation trust, then I think we should question whether that organisational form is appropriate to deliver the standards that we're expecting. So that's a recommendation that has been accepted. The Trust Development Authority has worked with those organisations, those 93, and has determined a categorisation list. And they know which ones will emerge out of that pipeline with support and those that won't. So that list is available. Unfortunately, there's something called an election which prevents it from being published right at the moment. But you can be certain that all political parties know about this list, and therefore that in a few months' time there will be action that will take place that will see a number of those organisations in persistent difficulty moving and changing their organisational shape. It will be a transactional solution. And this is right. It's right and proper that we don't preserve organisations when they're not able to deliver the standards of care that can be reasonably expected of them. So we have to address this rather than allow it to continue. So there's a set of arrangements that will be taking place. There's development opportunities, education, learning events that are taking place around the country to really get into some of the detail of this review. Behind the report, there are many annexes which pull together globally the evidence of what works and in what circumstances, and some how-to guides. And the intention is to be able to bring together those changes through the vanguards that are being announced, and you will hear some other changes shortly in prototyping some of this change. Bring this together so that we can be encouraging the leadership within our organisations to act as more like strategic architects rather than just stewards of their organisations. So my last slide, you'll be delighted to know, is this one, and if you'll excuse me for using an acute hospital here, but this can apply to a mental health or a community organisation. Just allow me to talk you through this. So this is my own view of how things may be in the future. So in the top left-hand corner there, I am predicting that very few organisations will continue to run their back office functions in an isolated way. There will be grouping, pooling, sharing, and putting together procurement functions, treasury management functions, HR functions, estate management, IT&M functions. It is ludicrous that we continue to do this and incur the huge management overheads in the way that we do at the moment. We've got to be able to do better and take that management overhead out. So I predict that we will be federating back office functions across our organisations, and about time too. I think as you move down to the bottom left, we will see the emergence across the country, and it's starting here already in Greater Manchester, of single shared service arrangements. I think most likely to be seen in our surgical services, but these can be in any service where current organisations see that in order to achieve their standards, and to do that reliably and to do it within the resources available, they will only be able to assure those standards if they're doing it in a networked manner, if they're creating single shared services which they govern through a joint clinical board or a joint venture arrangement, whatever it may be, where workforce across organisations gets pooled, where services in some part can be consolidated, but you are starting to see organisations maintaining their sovereignty, but pooling some of that in these new single shared service arrangements. And I believe that this is a mechanism that can allow us to accelerate change for the benefits of the people that we serve, without going through all the angst and difficulties of mergers and acquisitions, where you collide organisations into each other in order to try and get these solutions. In the lower centre, integrated care models, services, organisations, we will see this happen fairly quickly, not only in the vanguard sites, but in others that are pursuing this. And about time too. I mean, I think that this is a wonderful development of blending together elements of organisations that can manage pathways of care for our people better, particularly if they can enable the provision of that care to be as much as possible out of hospital, closer to home, and wherever possible in home. I think that we'll continue to see the Christies, the Walton Centres, the Moorfields develop their offering into other organisations, where it's seen that you get not only the assurance of clinical standards, but the delivery of that at an economic scale. And then at the top right, perhaps, there may be some experimentation in a number of hospitals or organisations deciding to group together, believing that in so doing, they can have surety over standards of service over a larger geographic reach. I've no idea. I simply don't know whether this is the landscape for the future. But I mean, that's what I was asked to do in the review, to offer signposts following a review globally of what's happening, pulling the best from that experience and showing how things could be different within our setting. I just hope that our traditional inclination to be conservative and to be sluggish in making these changes doesn't get the better of us, because going back to what I said, we see so much variation in standards of service that we have to have not only better models of care, but we have to have better governance arrangements and organisational delivery arrangements to assure those new models of care.